Today's recipe is literally back to basics. I'm going to show you how to make a chapati dough, and with that dough, make 3 different kinds of chapatis. Let's begin. Well, for the uninitiated, chapati is an Indian unleavened flatbread made using literally minimum most ingredients. Whole wheat flour. Wheat flour is very important for this recipe because that in a way forms the basis of the chapati, which is very similar to what you make for roti. Now, the difference between chapati and roti is that the roti dough, which is a tandoori roti dough, is a slightly denser. It's not as soft, but the chapati dough is literally soft with up to 30% hydration. Now, when I say 30% hydration, it's very simple. For 1 kg of wheat flour, you literally need around 300 ml of water, which is lukewarm. Basic ingredients: whole wheat atta, salt, lukewarm water, oil. Simple. Let's begin. Now, while I'm using whole wheat atta or whole wheat flour in this, by all means you can use a combination of attas or combination of flours. Some salt into this. Let's make a little bit of a well, as we call it, and add in the water. Now, do not get too adventurous and add in all the water at once. Let's keep picking the atta from the sides in circular motion, like so. Do not get tempted to squeeze this at this point in time because this will all lace up onto your fingers and make it sticky. Try to do this as neatly as you can and keep building all of this in the center. Keep removing this as you do it, because removing this later at once will end in creating these little clots that are not really required. At this point in time, let's now begin to grab these bigger chunks and bigger pieces and try to bring all of this together. So now, literally, if you realize the proportions that I was talking about, 30%, which means for 500 grams of flour, you literally take 150 ml of water, in this case really. Now, when you see that the flour is now kind of becoming stickier, you do not get tempted to add in more water. At this point in time, it's important to bring all of this together and build this up like so, literally by kneading it. Eventually, you'll need at least 6 to 7 minutes of kneading time for something like this. Try to punch it so that you increase the surface area. Once all of this literally comes together like so, we'll add in a teaspoon of oil. Our dough kneading is done and ready. And while I've done this using my palm or the pressure, human pressure, you can by all means use a processor, get this all done together, and with this you have the most perfect soft dough ready. We cover this and we keep this aside for 15 minutes. It's been 15 minutes and our soft chapati dough is now kind of well rested. Now, it's also important to understand the role that gluten plays in chapati making or roti making. Now, because we've used whole wheat flour, gluten of course is one of those important components in the flour. Now, there are 2 components there, glutenin and gliadinin. Now, these 2 ensure that they form strands which ensure that the chapati dough becomes elastic. It eventually ends up getting slightly puffier, and it also results in beautiful chewiness. Now, when I say chewy, do not associate chewiness to literally chomping and chewing, but into that nice little bite that you get while eating unleavened Indian breads. So that is gluten for you. Now, what I'm actually moving on to is a very typical flattened Indian bread from a Maharashtrian household, which is called Ghadichi Poli. Now, Ghadi literally translates to something that is folded, and Poli is what we in Maharashtra refer to as a chapati. So you dab this and then you literally pinch it like so. You create these little indents, you add in a dab of oil, and into this you drop in some flour. You literally cap this like so, and this now becomes your Ghadichi Poli. Dab this on the exterior with flour and you begin to roll. This is also one of the softest versions of a chapati because of the addition of oil. Very light hands, you just keep it pushing on the outside, ensuring that the shape is maintained. In case you think this is now about to stick, you dab some more flour, you push it back, maybe give it a flip, and then you continue rolling. The next step is to transfer this on a griddle, which is moderately hot, and cook this on both sides. At this point in time, let's increase the flame and allow the bubbles to rise. While we in our homes are used to flipping this by our fingers, because we've kind of been doing this for years, you can by all means use a flipper. At this point in time, when you see these bubbles rising, let's flip this. Now is the time to add in oil, because this, remember, is Ghadichi Poli, which also could be equated to a Telachi Poli. Well, similarly, let's make some more. Well, this, ladies and gentlemen, for you was Ghadichi Poli, which are literally folded into layers. The next one, let's move to Gujarat and let's make Padvali Roti. Roti is what chapati is to a Gujarati, and pad literally means layers. So in this case, you literally make a chapati, a roti, and then tear it into two different layers. Let's pinch in two marble-sized balls. The next step is to press them like so. You take some oil, apply it through and through like so, and then you dredge this with flour. You take this and take the two sides and press them and sandwich them like so. So if you see, it's very similar to a Ghadichi Poli, yet so different. So you literally have two layers like so. Now let's dab this in the dry flour. Let's roll this. Keep following the motion, clockwise, anti-clockwise, whichever you think is comfortable for you. Well, we need to follow the absolute similar steps. Add in very little of the oil. You can also do this with ghee in this case. And because this is a Padvali Roti, you literally have to be very quick when you do something like this. Now, the next step and the final step, which makes it the Padvali Roti, is to figure out the joint like so and literally rip it apart in the most natural form as it can get, is the Padvali Roti. Let's now move a little up north, coming to Phulka. Well, Phulka literally translates to a word called pulna, which is to puff up, literally like a balloon. This is one of the lightest of the chapatis, lightest of the rotis, for a simple reason, because this is not dredged with any more oil or butter or ghee. It is just flipped over open flame, and that's the end of it. And then it straight goes into the plate. Let's begin with a lemon-sized ball. We dab this in dry flour, and then we begin to roll. When it gets a little uncomfortable, you dredge some flour on both sides to ensure this does not stick. Let's transfer this onto the tawa, and if you realize and notice, the size is relatively smaller. The principle really remains the same. Once you see and notice bubbles, you flip it, but in this case then, with the help of a tong, you flip it directly onto the open flame. Well, with this, ladies and gentlemen, you have the Maharashtrian Ghadichi Poli, you have the Gujarati Padvali Roti, and you have the North Indian Phulka. When we were younger, of course, we were exposed to this with sabzis, dals, achars, dahi, and so many different things. But what was really important for us and absolutely nostalgic for us is when we were leaving for school, our mother used to literally plonk us on the kitchen table, and we had breakfast, which was chai and chapati. With this, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Varun, signing off. Bye for now.